This is the Free Spirits of L&D podcast, where we talk about life as a freelancer in the fascinating world of learning and development, and ask our guests all the questions you wanted to know but were maybe too afraid to ask. Yes, we even talk about how we get business and what we all charge. At the end of each episode, each guest gets to set a bonus question for the next one. So whether you're thinking about taking the leap, brand new to freelancing, or an experienced freelancer, you won't want to miss this. In this first episode, our guest is the wonderful Kim Ellis, who has enjoyed a long career in various learning and development roles all the way back to the early 2000s before founding her own business over 7 years ago. And she's just launched an exciting new project, which I'm sure we're going to end up talking about. Welcome, Kim.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So we've got some really great guests lined up for this series of the podcast, but I've been particularly looking forward to talking to you as the brain behind L&D Free Spirits. Now, I'm sure lots of people who are listening to this will have seen this somewhere in their socials popping up, but maybe should we start by talking about what L&D Free Spirits is?
Okay, so the whole idea of L&D Free Spirits really happened after a conversation that I was having with Erin Donovan back in December. And we were frustrated that there wasn't a network just for people like us. There's lots of great networks for L&D, for HR, for organisational development. There's loads of great networks out there. But do any of them tell you how to market your services, how to apply for tenders, how to pitch yourself, how to price yourself, how to create a business plan? That was the kind of development opportunities that we thought we would really have loved to have seen that when we first started out. And that was the driving force. And we just kind of thought, sod it, let's just do it. Build it, they will come.
Can we talk about how you came to that realisation that this was needed in this industry?
It kind of goes back to my freelance story. So just like bringing in a little bit of that, when I was first made redundant back in 2017, I didn't have a clue about what to do. I just kind of thought, let's throw a post out on LinkedIn and everybody's going to come flooding, and they didn't. And I kind of had to learn all of the business skills, all of the gubbins that come with working for yourself. I had to just stab in the dark, figure it out as I was going along. And Erin and I really wanted somewhere that could be a place that you get your hand held a little bit. There's resources, there's people who have been where you are that you can ask advice. What do I do about this? I didn't even know I needed indemnity insurance for the first 3 years of doing business. No clue. So it's a place that people can help each other to thrive.
I'd love to just dig into that a bit more about your story and kind of what took you from being in a stable, in inverted commas, role within the L&D industry to thinking about breaking out for yourself. What was that like?
Well, it was one of the things that, you know, you have these bucket lists, and for some people it's, I want to be the head of L&D, I want to, you know, run the e-learning department, I want to do this, I want to do whatever. I never had that. In the places that I was working, I kind of reached where I wanted to reach. If I was going to go to those higher levels, then it would have meant stopping doing what I really enjoyed doing. So it would have meant getting out of the classroom, which I love being in the classroom. But when you get to head of L&D, you're in the classroom sometimes. You're not in the classroom a lot. I like doing the design, I like doing the inductions, I like doing all of that stuff that comes with being an instructional designer and a trainer. So the whole idea was 5-year plan. I want to be a freelancer. And I'd had that for over a decade. I was like, I want to do this. I don't want to just do it for one company. I want to do it for other companies. I want to see how they work, how they tick, how I can help them. Do something with different branding. I'm stuck using the same 4 colours for years. I want some variation. So that was really the driving force in when I was made redundant and I had that little pot from the employer. I thought, if I'm going to do it, I've got to do it now. There's no better time to do it now. But then I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
So I did everything backwards. I set up my website, did my logo before I even left the business, rather than thinking, how am I actually going to find work? So, yeah, I did it all a little bit backwards, but wouldn't go back.
Yeah, it's difficult to think about going back, isn't it? I think once you've been in it for such a long time, it's a tricky thing to consider the different model that freelancers operate around.
Yeah, you're unemployable. You get to the point that the thought of going back and working in that kind of structure for a long period of time, dealing with the politics, dealing with PDPs. I know they have their place, but it's a blooming nightmare. I used to dread doing my PDP. So, doing those things that come with being employed, I don't think I would ever want to go back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there is a certain element of, like, as you kind of rise through the ranks of an organisation, the traditional model of kind of a hierarchical organisation, almost every problem that you end up encountering is a people problem. Whether it's kind of managing people, having the dynamics of a team to worry about. And again, like you say, no one ever teaches you how to do this. It's not taught in the curriculum, but it becomes actually the reason why a lot of people leave and struggle is because they realise they wanted the kind of ego boost and the label of having a really high-powered role, but actually without some of the really challenging, intricate, nuanced elements of having those kind of roles, which inevitably comes down to people. It's really tough.
And there's a lot of pressure when you're employed as well, because you've got all of these targets that you need to hit. You've got your delivery deadlines, and yes, you have that when you're a freelancer, but I feel less pressure being a freelancer, even when I've got 2 clients with the same deadline, which happened last year, and I was at the top of the tree. But across the year, I feel less pressure as a freelancer than I did when I was employed.
So you started talking about that you'd done things kind of the wrong way round, but yet you probably wouldn't change it. I think there's a lot in that. There's a lot in kind of, if somebody was just brainstorming, how do you set up a business? How do you become an entrepreneur? And how do you start doing all of that? Everyone would probably have a different version of events around what do you do first, second, third, fourth. It strikes me that it will be a great thing to have, that this kind of thing could be taught on a curriculum in schools.
Yeah.
And, maybe an argument to say it should be a core subject. If we wanted to have a really entrepreneurial society where people could do this as they left the kind of school system, what a different world we could live in. What sort of things would you add to that curriculum if we had that kind of approach?
Okay, so, I finished school 16, I went to college for 1 year and then quit because I wanted to work for beer money. So, yeah, that was my driving factor in college. That was how useful it was. And I was actually doing a business GMVQ, and that's how long ago it was that was still a thing. And yeah, the whole academia thing wasn't for me. I was very much more, I want to go in and earn money. I was doing 2 jobs. I want to get my hands dirty, so to speak. But if I would have gone to college about being an entrepreneur, learning the business skills, things like how do you navigate the mountains and valleys? Because that's a big thing. When people first leave employment and they become a freelancer or self-employed, whatever label you want to put on it, it's great when they're in the mountains. Or halfway up the mountain is like the ideal place where you've got a gig, you're earning a decent amount of money, and then you get to the top of the mountain and you've got clients chasing you and you're having to turn work down, it's great, but also that's where the stress level can get. And then you're at the other side, you're down the valley where it's like tumbleweeds. There's no work. And then you're thinking, crap, where am I going to get some money from? I need some money. I need another gig. So then you start the panic cycle. So navigating that and all of the mental health struggles that come with navigating the mountains and valleys, that would be one of the biggest things. Like, how do you get out of that month by month payment cycle to then essentially working in payment sprints. So you might get, over the course of 2 months or 3 months with a client, you might end up with 30 grand, 40 grand from that work. It might be 10. But then you're thinking, well, okay, so now I've got this pot of money that will last me, in theory, 4 months. So that's giving you that ease, that little bit of breathing space. You don't have to constantly chasing work. Staying disciplined, that would be another one of the big ones. How do you motivate yourself when you're working alone? And actually do the stuff that you need to do. And we'll all know that unless you have a social media calendar and planner, you don't do your socials. It goes to the back of your mind, but that can be one of your biggest assets. And then managing your time, making sure that you make time to switch off. I am not great at switching off, but I've got a rhythm that works for me. So like 4, 5 o'clock, laptop gets put down, but I'll do things on my phone, or, unless I'm being paid to work evenings, I'll do things on my phone, on the tablet, while I'm chilling out downstairs. So I kind of, even though I'm still working, I'm not working, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How about on the other side of that then? So if that's what the end of your kind of working day close off looks like, how does the beginning of it look in terms of your discipline and getting into the day?
I'm an early riser, so I get up, I go downstairs, have my cup of herbal tea. At the moment, I'm loving a ginger and peppermint one from Aldi, which is delicious and great for digestion, because you've got to think about gut health. And I just chill out, catch up on what's happening on Slack, on LinkedIn, on email. So I'm already, as soon as I wake up, I'm there churning away, doing things. But I'm on the sofa watching whatever Susanna and Ed Balls are talking about on GMB. And then my husband will usually ask me if I want some toast, which I always think in my head, no, I don't, because I need to stay off bread. But yes, please, I'll have it with raspberry jam. And then I'll kind of mosey on upstairs about 8 o'clock, 7:30. And then I'll just start, boot up the computer and then get into it.
Yeah, I met someone the other day who said that their queue that work has started is when they put the first washing load on. So it's like a little switch goes off in their brain. As soon as they close the door on the washing machine in the morning, right, time to go and start work. And it actually doesn't matter when that is. That could be at 8 o'clock, it could be at 10 o'clock, but that is the clue and the cue when that happens. I thought that was really cool. It was a really nice idea that you have this kind of mental switch into different, almost like different gears. I think that's the challenge, isn't it? I've really struggled with that. I'm not as far into that journey as you are, but the paradox of knowing that you can work whenever you want, and also you can work whenever you want. There's a real danger in that whole cycle of going, oh, but there's just that email I could send, or I probably should get on with that invoicing, or maybe I should do my socials. Actually, I think you're absolutely right. In terms of the discipline, having that taught as part of the curriculum, that would make such a big difference to a lot of people who naturally don't think in that way. It would really help.
I know people that work 16 hours a day. And I'm like, I did not get into freelance life to work more hours. But then if you think about, as soon as I wake up, I'm checking the emails. And I'm on my phone until I pretty much go to bed. Phone, tablet, whatever. I'm on some kind of device, unless I'm doing some knitting to have some proper downtime. And it's, if I was to count up all of the hours that I do, I'd be like, yeah, I probably do work 16 hours a day, but I don't feel like I'm working 16 hours a day.
That's it, isn't it? It's about how you value that time when you're building something that is just for you, as opposed to lining somebody else's pockets. It really changes the value that you place around the time that you spend on it, and that can be both a good and a bad thing. There's this great experiment. I remember this from my degree. It's one of the only things that stayed in my head about this thing called the Lego effect. I think the IKEA effect, where they gave two groups of people. I was thinking Lego because it involves Lego. They gave two groups of people, they being a group of researchers, And the first group were given a kind of a pre-built Lego car to play with and kind of experiment with and look at and feel and touch. The second group were given the bricks and the instructions and told to build the car from scratch. And at the end of the time, they were then asked how much they would like to pay to keep it. And the group who had to build it themselves paid a significant amount more. So there's something in that about how much we sometimes value, potentially overvalue, the things that we build for ourselves because we've poured so much of ourselves into it.
Yes. And Free Spirits is like that. When we had the conversation back in December, January, I registered the business with Companies House, and I made that conscious decision to stop taking on new clients.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to put everything into this. I'm going to fund it with my own money. I'm not earning pretty much. I mean, I've earned probably $4,000 this year so far, which is, people out there will be thinking, how are you affording to live? But this is the thing with the mountains and valleys. You earn a chunk and then it tides you over. So it's one of those that you need to commit. When you're becoming self-employed, you need to actually commit and see it as, this is you. You are now a freelancer. You are now responsible for your own destiny. You're not relying on anybody else. It's your power to do what you want to do, to make your dreams reality. And you've got to, throw everything into it.
Yeah, I love the mountains and valleys analogy. I've never heard it described like that before, and I think it's a much more positive way than the phrase that I normally hear, which is feast and famine. And the thing that feast and famine makes me think about is kind of going back to kind of our evolutionary makeup and how actually in a lot of ways we're kind of preset to live like this. Like we would never have had a constant stream of income and food and resources and bounty in the way that a lot of regular employed life is set up to give you. Actually, there's something incredibly motivating about knowing that you've probably got enough money to last for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, luckily, if you're lucky. So going out and having to find that and build that and generate that is, for a lot of people, they don't get into that space ever. It's a really different way of thinking.
It's empowering.
And I think you're right. It's empowering. That's a much more beautiful word. It is really empowering. You are completely in control of your destiny. And that's where I think things like Free Spirits comes in, isn't it? Because I think one of the things that I really was most fearful of after leaving an employed role was about a team. Because, yeah, actually managing a team is hard, but also I knew I would miss that sense of being around people and having a group of people and a community and a network to draw on for support. And actually what I found is that even as a freelancer, you have a team and you have a community. Yes. You just get to choose it. You get to choose and build it for yourself. Community is everything in this game, I think.
This is the thing. And knowing that you've got somebody who you can just be like, I'm having a moment, I need you to talk me down. I'm thinking of jacking it in and applying for a job. I need you to just give me some sense. Knowing that you've got a dozen people that you could message and they'd be like, I'm here for you. And that's really the core of what Free Spirits is all about, that we want to create that community of peers who you can, you can reach out to, you can motivate each other, you can share success stories. We even have a rant and moan channel in the Slack group for when you just need to blow off some steam.
I love that. And actually, I had it with a friend of mine. I won't mention the name, but they had exactly that wobble the other day, and we just had to talk it through. And it was talking down and saying, I've seen this role that's been advertised. I could do that standing on my head with my arms crossed behind my back. And we talked about, well, why haven't you applied for it? The jealousy that somebody could get it that wasn't them. And actually it was going back to those original questions around, well, why are we here? Is it about building something that's just for you? All of the freedom that comes with that, you're not going to get that anywhere else. What do you think, Kim, is the biggest question most wannabe freelancers want to know the answer to, based on your experience?
How do you find work? How do you get your clients? How do you land your barracudas? You know, because
okay, what's a barracuda?
Your barracuda is your, 40, 50 grand jobs, that kind of thing, or even more, depending on the length of the project. My first freelance gig, first, was off a freelancer website. There are several. There's Fiverr, Upwork, freelancer.com, there's People Per Hour, there's quite a few. I built somebody an e-learning, and it took me a couple of days, and I got $200 US dollars. And even though I was really proud about that, I thought, is this a sustainable way for me to make money, for me to find clients? I'm spending hours and hours and hours trawling through all of these sites, looking for the e-learning developer jobs, instructional design jobs, video development, that kind of thing. I'm trawling and bidding on things, getting underbid, having to reduce my bid. So don't be me. Don't go for those kind of websites, because it is a race to the bottom. And that's really what I thought. I wanted direct clients. I wanted to work with lots of different and diverse organisations. But then a recruiter buddy rung me up out of the blue and asked me to pitch for a 3-month contract, and it was to deliver GDPR to a healthcare company. And I'd never considered contracting, and it was 3 months on a day rate. And then after the 3 months was done, I went in, I did what I needed to do. I actually did extra. They ended up with face-to-face workshop, virtual workshop, video, infographics, and the e-learning that they actually employed me to do. And I walked away from that 3 months later with 20 grand, and I was like, ooh, this is nice. I'm going to take the summer off and spend it on the patio drinking wine. This is great. So finding work is the biggest question, and the answer to that is you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to leverage your network. You've got to create network. You've got to actually get out to industry events, not just in L&D, but in the industries that you want to work in. You've got to have a good relationship with recruiters. There's lots of different things that go into it.
Can we just revisit that piece, because that seems like it was a big turning point for you, the GDPR gig coming up through your recruiter buddy. Can you talk me through what were the steps that helped you make that decision at the time? Because it sounds like you'd never considered contract work before. So can you just talk me through?
It was a thing. I did. This is how naive I was. I didn't know day rate contracts were a thing. And that was 8 months after I became self-employed, which might seem absolutely bonkers to people that, well, what do you mean you didn't know contracting was a thing? I didn't have any peers to bounce ideas. I didn't know any other self-employed people. So, it was when I got the call, and it was from Neil at Folk Recruitment. Lovely people. And it was like, it's just got this gig, you can do it, stood on your head. And I knew Neil from when I worked at Sky Bet. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, well, go and have a conversation. And it says, oh, it's a day rate thing. It's like, right, okay. No idea what that means. It says it's 350 quid a day. I was like, you bloody what? What? People are going to pay me that much? And when you've had 8 months of not earning anything of substance, like 350 quid a day? What? That's a lot. And I met the lady who was the head of HR, and the interview was for 90 minutes, and I ran out of time. So I didn't even get to show her the implementation plan for the global rollout of the e-learning. and the full training schedule for everything. I didn't get a chance. So I said to her, I was like, oh, give us your email address. I'll email this over. And then I rang the recruiter and I was like, Neil, I said, I've been to me. And he was like, oh, because he knows what I'm like. So he knows that I would have been waffling and going down the rabbit hole. And then he rang me back and he was like, you were exactly you. You were exactly perfect. She loved you. And then started not long after that.
What was that like after then? And so did you have other pieces of contract work that came up, and how did that part of your journey evolve?
I kind of got bitten by the contracting bug for a while. So after that, I then did another contract, which I actually found off freelancer.com, and it was in Batley, which is not too far away from me. And that was to do storyboarding for a company. But I ended up, because I can do a lot of other stuff, I ended up then training up their grads to do storyboards and then to build e-learning. And so it was a more fulfilling role than just doing the storyboarding, which I'd applied for. That one was significantly lower than the first one, and that lasted for 5 months. And I went straight into another contract, which was significantly more than the one that I'd just been on, and that was 2.5 years. And then COVID hit, saw me through COVID, and I was like, I'm not doing what I wanted to do. So I fell in love with contracting, then fell out of love with contracting, because I was like, it's like I'm being employed, but I don't have the benefits of being employed, like the pension, like sick pay. I mean, not that I'm ever sick, but do you know what I mean? Holiday pay, I don't have the benefits, but I'm still ingrained in a company. So yeah.
I think one of the kind of founding principles of this podcast is that we tend to ask the questions that people don't generally ask. So I'm imagining someone's listening to this at the moment going, God, that sounds really interesting. What on earth does that look like? So let's say you get a contract come through and it's a 5-month contract for whatever, 250 quid a day. What does that actually mean? Do you have to go every day? Do you have to go every week? When do you get paid? What does that actually look like?
It all depends. All of my contracts have been different. So the first contract, the 3-monther, that was on site 5 days a week. It was a 90-mile round trip. I basically killed the smart car doing that. I had to start using my husband's car because a little 700cc wasn't cutting it for 90 miles a day. No. But to be fair, the recruiter on that one took a finder's fee. So I was invoicing the client directly. So at the end of the month, invoice them, get paid a month later. That company, they had a cracking on-site cafe. So every morning it was like poached eggs on toast. It was amazing. The next one, because I'd found it through the freelancer site, it was basically like direct. So I signed the contract, the NDAs and everything with them, and then I would invoice them directly. I did renegotiate my day rate halfway through the contract. So it was initially for a 3-month, and then I signed on for another couple of months because I was like, I come in at a price for storyboarding, but I'm doing a lot more than that. So I renegotiated that price, which you can do, but it's a little bit hit and miss. It really depends on what your relationship is like with the people that hold the purse strings. And then the one after that, I got through an agency who were taking a portion of my day rate, but it was also within IR35, so I was having to use an umbrella company, which meant that I was paying tax and NI through the umbrella company, but I was also doing some of my own work on the side, so my accountant then had like a bag of spaghetti to sort out because part of my income was taxed, part of it wasn't. And yeah, I ended up getting tax rebates every year, and because it was weird. So my accountant was like, please don't do this again. I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess those add to the mountains, though. Those tax rebates, when they come in, sometimes they're just a surprise. unless you've got a really good accountant who's able to forecast it for you. That's a bit of the pattern here, actually, that you have to try out lots of different things. You have to experience a lot of different scenarios and settings in order to find kind of what your particular channel is and where you're most comfortable. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know a single person who started out doing the thing that they're doing now. They might have started out in one idea and then a year later it shifts. There's a lot of shifting when you do this kind of stuff. You learn new things. You go to different sectors. You learn different authoring tools, different skills. You think, oh, I can create a course to go and sell to companies on this. And then that you shift to that. There's a lot of shifting. Okay, so we're coming up to the question that I imagine will become the question that underpins most of our podcasts, which we will ask every one of our guests. And that is, what is your day rate? It varies. Not going to lie, I've worked for 200 quid a day to 450 a day. I don't have a set day rate. I know people that do. That they won't work for less than 400 or less than 600 or whatever it is. I think that that's the wrong mindset to have, because I look at projects and I think about, what am I getting from that project? Is it a boost in a new industry, a new sector? Is that going to potentially open doors for me in future? Is it a new skill that I'm having to learn? Is it a new authoring tool? Is it a new, video tool or whatever? What am I getting from it? Is it exposure to a really juicy, company that I think, oh, I don't care what the money is, I really want that project. So it depends. And also, what's the size of the company? I worked with a company who they work with kids. So they take kids who struggle in school, come from bad background, broken homes, drugs, gangs, violence, all of that, and they mentor them to become, fabulous members of society. And they needed their entire curriculum digitizing and then putting onto an LMS. And I went in lower than I would if it was a corporate client, because it's for the kids and their ongoing support. I don't charge them for that. Little tweaks here, little tweaks there, questions and stuff. I know people who would charge for that, but I'm like, it's for the kids. Yeah, it has to vary, right? It has to, because that's the whole point of being able to run your own business, that you can set the rate whatever you want it to be, and it might be that it's high one day for this particular client who can afford it, who've got a dedicated budget available for this project, and it's low or nothing for another client who can't afford it, but actually would really benefit and value the work. Yeah. It also depends where you're getting the work from. So if it's coming through a recruiter, they have found your client. They have done all the admin. They've onboarded them. They've done all of that. My day rate for a recruiter is less. So that might be 300, 350, might even be 250. It depends what it is I'm doing, how long the contract's for. If I'm going direct to a corporate client, it might be 450, 500. The different ways that you can price yourself when you're going out directly to a client. You can do day rate, or you can do project fees. And I'm kind of going more towards doing project fees rather than saying, oh, well, that's going to take me 20 days at 400 a day. That's going to be this amount of money. So if you're doing a project fee, that's fine for your own clients, but it won't work with a recruiter client. So if you're doing work contracting, even if it's just single builds, a little bit here, a little bit there, that will be usually on a day rate. But your own clients, have a think about what value are you delivering to that client. If you're going to increase their sales by 200 grand in the first year with the solution that you're delivering, is it out of bounds to think, well, I'll take 10% of that, even though it's only 3 weeks work? Just to throw out there. It can be the starting point. So, it's getting the different pricing mindset away from day rate, but the majority of freelancers will do day rate. That's so interesting, because so many other industries default to a project base. I'm thinking about when we had our loft done in our house.
Like, if I paid the builders a day rate, it'd probably still be getting done now, because their motivation is to make as much money as possible and show there'll be some progress, sure, but I would rather have paid them when I know what the outcome is that is in my head, which is that I've got a fully finished loft conversion.
Yeah.
It's different that could vary in this particular industry, where people would want just a day of your time rather than the outcome that's in their head that they want to buy you in for.
Exactly. And my husband, who was a builder for 30 years or whatever, he was like, you can do it on day rate or price. If you do it on price, you do it as quick as possible. If you do it on day rate, it's as long as possible.
I like it. It's good. Maybe there's something for us to learn about there as well, in the kind of L&D freelance world. Yeah. Firstly, thank you for sharing that, Kim. I think it's really important for us all to have this conversation. I think so many people in this industry are quite nervous about sharing some of that stuff. But the more we share it, actually, the more standardised this whole space will get. And I think, I'm a big believer in that phrase of a rising tide lifts all ships. And so it doesn't become a race to the bottom, it actually becomes a race to what we feel we're worth, which is where we should be in this space. So we will be having that conversation with everybody else who comes on this podcast, and I'm really looking forward to getting into some of that with them.
I really hope that we don't get people who are just coming on saying, this is my day rate, £300, I won't work for any less. I hope that we don't get people who aren't open to the benefits of working for lower for different types of projects.
Yeah. And actually, that's a skill in itself, isn't it? Being able to just walk back from the mindset of, I don't get out of bed for less than £300, to what doors does this open for me? What new possibilities does this offer me? Maybe another one to add into the curriculum, maybe. Just negotiating with yourself. I know in my case, my big struggle was saying it out loud. So I used to rehearse it in front of a mirror. If somebody asked me, how much is this going to cost? I was able to say it in a way that sounded both natural but also confident. I think if the first time you pitch yourself for the first time and you say a number that you've attached to your worth, it can feel a bit weird. So my biggest advice would be to actually stand in front of a mirror and say it out loud as many times as you need to until it comes out and you don't feel weird about it.
Yes. But you've also got to remember that you've spent, for me, it's nearly 20 years learning my craft. People are not paying me to build them a, onboarding program. They're paying me to know how to do it with impact. They're paying me to know how to engage their people, how to increase retention, and how to, get people to ultimately become advocates of the company. That's what they're paying for. That's my worth.
So this is another question that we're going to be asking all of our guests, Kim. What question do you have for our next guest?
There's so many questions that I could throw out, but the biggest thing would be, who inspires you? I draw inspiration from so many people across my network, from people that gave me the time of day when they didn't know who I was, to people that gave me confidence and really said, you can do this. These are the steps to help you along the way. And a lot of them I'm still in contact with. I'm not going to name them because I don't want anybody to feel left out, because there are many, but I have several that inspire me. I will name three people who inspire me, or three people who have made the biggest difference to my career. First one is Jim Oldroyd. He is one of our wizards, and he was my first L&D manager. So he's responsible for all of this. He got me into this gig. And I followed him from LV to Sky Bet, and then we got made redundant together. The next person who inspires me would be Neil Lasher. He is one of our corporate partners with Too Late Recruitment, and he was my first mentor And he was the guy to give me a kick up the ass to be like, right, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to think about niche. You need to think about all of this business stuff, because he's been there, done that, knows everybody. So he still inspires me, and I'm still in touch with him. And the third one, and like I said, there are many, many out there. The third one would be Joan Keevil, who was the chairperson of the Learning Network when I first joined. And when lockdown first happened, I was on a webinar with her, and I had the idea of doing the tea and talks to bring people together so they could de-stress and just chatter when they were suddenly at home without, work colleagues. And then she gave me so many opportunities to thrive as a director. So I owe her a lot for my entire stint on the Learning Network board.
That's amazing. Wow. We'll maybe have to see if we get some of those individuals on the podcast in the weeks to come. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. They are all self-employed. So
as we start to wrap up, Kim, if people are curious to find out a bit more about you and also about Free Spirits, where can they go to?
They can go to ldfreespirits.com, and I would suggest looking through all of the tabs, obviously, because I want you to read all about why we set the company up, becoming a member, a bit about me. We've got links to all of our wizards, and you are our podcast wizard, Mark, our corporate partners, what courses we've got coming up. So we have some courses in there. We've got different events. Some of them are free to everybody. Some of them cost a $5. Or, if you're not a member, there's a fee involved. If you're a member, there's, it's free. There's the resources, which have previous webinars, downloadable templates on there, blogs, all of that kind of stuff. So I'd say go over to ldfreespirits.com and just have a look around. If you have any questions, you can always find me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for coming on, Kim. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know by leaving a review on your favourite podcast app. It really makes a difference. And if you want to learn more about how L&D Free Spirits can lift up your freelancing business, you can find out more information at ldfreespirits.com.